Okay, so a pleasant day to all of you, and welcome to our very last lecture for the entire semester. Yeah. But I should say last lectures, no, because this particular module is divided into five segments. So for this day, we're going to talk about the writings of Rizal. So we have selected five works. Well, it's actually six, no, but um, we'll just discuss it into five separate parts, and we will know why. No, we're only talking about these five works, despite a number of um, writings. No, Rizal has throughout his political, not really political, but writing career. Yeah. So the works that we're going to discuss are the following. Number one, Annotation of Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. Number two is No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo. So isang discussion na lang yung dalawang novels. Number three, Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos. Number four, Philippines a Century Hence. And number five, A Letter to the Women of Malolos. So bakit itong lima? Well, itong lima kasi yung kino-consider natin, no, na staple when it comes to studying Rizal. Sila yung pinaka-explored, pinaka-studied. So, ang dami ng existing interpretations, no, that will make it easier for us to understand what could have been Rizal's point, no, or what could have uh, Rizal tried to, convey in his works. Yeah. Another significance of these five works is that it shows how Rizal transitioned from being a progressive to a radical. No? From someone na hindi pa masyadong hinog yung kanyang stance, no, to somebody whose views and whose opinions on matters involving politics, governance, and the Filipino people are very informed. Yeah. Pinapakita din ng limang works na 'to yung kanyang political color, 'no, na madalas lang natin na nakikita sa kanyang two novels. Na kung tutuusin dun sa dalawang nobela niya, medyo kulang pa yun ano, kasi, yun yung mga una niyang gawa, eh. So, definitely as time passes by, nagma-mature ang tao, same with Rizal 'no, sa katagalan ng kanyang pagkaka-immerse sa political movement, no, nagbago din siya ng kanyang outlook. And lastly, these works show how versatile Rizal is when it comes to writing. No, not only he is good when it comes to poetry and to writing plays, ganyan. He was very prolific then when it comes to writing fiction and non-fiction. Yan. So, yung ating selection of works ay magpapakita nitong versatility na meron si Jose Rizal. So, as mentioned, we're going to present these works in a quote-unquote, succeeding manner. So, yung succeeding na yun ay tumutukoy doon sa progression na maganda nating tignan from a thematic point of view. Okay? So, ano nga ba yung mga gusto niyang i-establish? So our first work is this, no? His annotation of Antonio de Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. Ang ating objectives ang mga sumusunod. Differentiate the bipartite and tripartite view of Philippine history. So mamaya yon. Explain the differences of the views of Antonio de Morga and Jose Rizal in culture and history. Number three, analyze the culture present in the work of Antonio Morga that has connection in the present culture of the Philippines. So for every work that we're going to study, I took a quote, no, from that piece, and we'll use it to further elaborate our point. So in one section, no, of the annotation, Rizal said Filipinos had minstrels who had memorized songs telling their genealogies and of the deeds ascribed to their deities. These were chanted on voyages in cadence with the rowing or at festivals or funerals or wherever there happened to be any considerable gatherings. It is regrettable that these chants have not been preserved, as from then it would have been possible to learn much of the Filipinos' past and possibly of the history of the neighboring islands. So from this point, you may see Rizal as a historian, an anthropologist. Okay, he is exhibiting his knowledge na sources are not limited to, written documents. Now you may opt to listen to, things that are uttered by mouth, no, and use it as a source of history. So we can see here that he's lamenting on the loss of, this tradition and these practice, and of course yung kaakibat na knowledge na naipasa sana kung hindi nawala yung pagchant, no, ng babaylan. So yung babaylan yung tinutukoy ni Rizal dito. Yan. So furthermore, we can also analyze this, no, by looking at how he emphasized na we're not only going to learn the history of the Filipinos but of the neighboring islands as well. Yan. So very pan-Asian yung view, no? Parang you have to look at the Philippines as it is situated in a region with neighbors. So to understand Philippine history, you will also understand the history of its neighbors. Ganun yung point niya. So, ano nga ba yung sucesos and why was it chosen, no, to be annotated? Well, Sucesos is originally written by Antonio de Morga in 1609. So the book was published in Mexico and it is considered one of a few, no, significant earliest works about the Philippines when it became a Spanish colony. It explains the political, social, and economical aspects of a colonizer and the colonized country. So, maganda siyang source, ano, kasi dito kinuwento ni De Morga anong transformations ng Pilipinas during the first years of Spanish colonization. And marami kang ma-extract doon about the pre-colonial Philippines kasi bago nila baguhin kung ano yung tingin ng mga Kastilang tamang way of living or tamang establishment ng community, ano muna yung mga napansin nila? Ano yung mga kailangan nilang i-alter? Ano yung mga kailangan nilang palitan? So, ano yung naabutan nila? Of course, that has been discussed. And you would happen to know what kind of society did the early Filipinos um, lived on, ano? Uh, at ano yung nasaksihan nilang mabago dahil sa Spanish colonization. So, looking at the book itself, no, it's more of a discussion of uh, Antonio de Morga's view of events. No? Kaya nga siya sucesos kasi ibig sabihin ng events. Yung sucesos. Events in the Philippine Islands. And this was annotated by Rizal in 1890 due to the influence of Ferdinand Blumentritt. He wrote the annotation when he was able to get a copy sa British Museum. Unfortunately, hindi siya pinayagang ilabas yung copy. So, he had to copy it page by page using handwriting. Yan. Tapos, after nun, tsaka siya gumawa ng annotation. So, the work is composed of 8 chapters. Ano? I will not go through each chapter but there will be a specific chapter na magfo-focus tayo mamaya. Okay? This one. Chapter 8. An Account of the Philippine Islands. So, again, balik tayo sa title. Title is Sucesos de las Islas de Filipinas, Events of the Philippine Islands. So, these events refer to, the idea that Spaniards have committed these things or these acts when they finally took over the Philippines. But who is Morga, by the way? Morga is a Spanish lawyer and a government official during the 17th century. He is considered to be an historical anthropologist. So, yun yung job description niya. And siya nga po yung author ng sucesos. He is considered an expert, kasi not only that he was there, of course, he witnessed everything. Siya rin po ay may doctorate sa canon and civil law. Yan. And he wrote the book to tell all the achievements of Spain in colonizing the Philippines. Kaya nga po siya sucesos. No? Yan, parang uh, what were the victories of Spain in the Philippines. Yan. Pero why of all works written by Spaniards, Rizal chose to annotate Morga? Context lang, during this time kasi Rizal was already forming his political opinion, na he wants to take action. He wants to change the way Filipinos are seen by the Spaniards, and he can only do that by attacking the root of this view, no? And yung root nun syempre yung writings ng mga Kastila. So Rizal opted to fight it using writing as well by trying to um, deny, no, or even criticize the views that the Spaniards held against the Filipinos for a very, very long time. Pero malaki ding influence sa kanya, no, sa pagpili niya kay Morga, no, si Blumentritt. Kasi definitely nabasa na ni Blumentritt si Morga, and Blumentritt has long been um, asking Rizal, no, to write the history of the Philippines, kasi it was not a thing back then. Parang it was a very rare thing for a Filipino to write the history of a Philippines. And Rizal would be one of the first few people who will be able to do that. So eventually, syempre nakita naman natin yung nangyari, nag-give in si Rizal, no, sa mga views ni Blumentritt. Pero syempre, Rizal also made his own mind through certain reasons, no, bakit si Morga yung napili niya at yung sucesos. Okay, first, he looks at Morga as an objective eyewitness. Hindi siya affiliated sa Catholic Church in a sense. So he would give a more unbiased view of the Philippines. Also, among the first works about the Philippines, yung kay Morga lang yung yung Philippines civil and political yung approach, no? It's not ecclesiastical. It doesn't talk about God or religion or Catholicism. No. It purely talks about the events. So that makes it a very good candidate for an annotation, no? Which is supposed to be scholarly. So, yung reason na yon, no, makes the book more friendly to Rizal kasi it's more secular, it's more factual. So, you can debate on facts. You can debate on, observations. You cannot debate using emotions or using religious writings, no. Definitely wala kang papatunguhan doon. Number 4, the work is also more sympathetic to native Filipinos. Yan. So, among the other writings on the Philippines, si Morga yung pinaka-less racist, pinaka-less discriminatory in a sense, no? And, syempre, yung nabanggit ko na kanina, he was a primary source. Morga seen all of these things, no? He has seen all of these things. He saw the transformation. So, he's more than qualified, no, um, to be considered for an annotation kasi nga po, it was an account of a person who have seen these events throughout his lifetime. Okay? So, gaya ng aking nabanggit, we'll just focus on one chapter, which is chapter 8, no? Um, Dito sa chapter 8, ang daming points na ginawa ni Morga, no? Dito niya pinakita na we have a very quote-unquote strange set of cultural practices. Kakaiba din yung beliefs and worldviews natin. And he made comments on the food we eat, how do we cook, how do we bathe ourselves, and why do we worship anitos. No? And unfortunately, while Morga tried to be very restraining to himself, no, when he was doing these observations, hindi pa din nawala yung mga aggressions niya in his writings, no? By looking at this very dichotomized view of the Philippines and Spain. Parang Filipinos had this culture, so Spain brought a better culture to remove this. No? Parang ganun yung dating. So of course, Rizal attacked those things. Yan. Rizal asserted that we have a unique sense of culture and that the Spaniards have their own culture, that the Filipinos have already a thriving culture and practices prior to Spain's arrival. So it is an injustice to say that when the Spaniards came to the Philippines, no, they saw a lot of savages, no, when in fact hindi yun totoo. Okay? Because Filipinos have already been trading with their neighbors, no? And of course, how can you trade and be trusted by your neighbors if you are deranged, 'di ba? So, napaka-faulty ng reasoning na gano'n. And lastly, of course, on that part, Rizal countered the idea that Spain brought civilization to the Philippines, no? Numerous times. For him, it's the opposite. No? There was already a civilization. Spain came and brought darkness. So Filipinos had to turn or switch on the light once more, so that they can regain what they lost. Now, here's one of the most important takeaways from, sucesos, no? The annotation. Dito natin makikita how Rizal contributed to the tripartite view of history. Pag sinabi nating tripartite, we're talking about the three ways of looking at history. Tripartite, three parts. Pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial. Yan. When Rizal was writing this, it was new, no? Developing idea pa lang yung tripartite view kasi for the longest time, Spain taught Filipinos that it was a bipartite view. Okay, meaning bipartite, dalawa, no? Uncivilized, civilized. And basically they were referring to the uncivilized part as, you know, they're referring to our ancestors, no? And yung other party, of course, they're praising themselves. Yeah. But thanks to these propagandistas, no, we're able to first encounter a tripartite view of Philippine history. So Del Pilar, Lopez Haina, and Rizal had all their own contributions, no, to this view. And when you read the content, you'd get to see a lot of differences, no? Especially on Del Pilar and Haina's part, kasi because they have this very inconclusive approaches, no? So, focus tayo kay Rizal. For Rizal, during the pre-colonial period, Filipinas had a civilization of their own and was progressing. So, like, we're okay without you, no? Then you came, colonial period. Decay, retrogression, it all happened. Civic virtues loss, vices taken over, social cancer in the late 19th century. It was the time that, Rizal is slowly embracing that there is a social cancer. No? Yung idea ng social cancer. Na parang, it's always there. It's something you cannot predict, but it will always be there. Yan. So, okay nung pre-colonial, pangit tong colonial. So, what should happen next? No, sa POV ni Rizal sa post-colonial period, there should be freedom at the end of the road. Most probably daw, revolution, which is a violent one, or pwede tactically through reforms. No? So, Rizal was already providing us options that may result into a solution to a problem, no? And yon, uh, it only shows that Rizal is not very biased, or it's not totally subjective about the idea of revolution, because he did mention it there. Pero balik tayo sa tripartite view of history. Importante na malaman natin na contribution nito ni Rizal, Del Pilar, and Haina, kasi ito yung magiging common way of writing Philippine history. No? Na ngayon, syempre nabasag na siya ilang beses, na hindi natin magandang tignan yung mga panahon ng pananakop bilang time of transitions, because when we take a look at that, parang napaka-passive ng mga Filipino. Parang they just allow things to happen, they don't think for themselves, and that's very problematic. So, um, maganda na we use this tripartite view, no? And syempre, not now, no, na ilang beses na siyang binasag, no? A lot of critics were made, but to recognize that we had a past before the Spaniards came. So, the main points of chapter 8 are the following. Yan. First, Rizal wanted to annotate because he wanted to dispel any erroneous views that the Spaniards held about the Philippines and the Filipinos, no? Na for the longest time, yun yung pinanghawakan nilang tingin nila sa atin. And of course, we have to change that. He did not intend to attack Morga. Tama naman. No? He did not attack Morga. No? Walang ad hominem. Pero ang inatake niya yung opinions ni Morga. Of course, yung target audience niya, no, would most likely be Spaniards themselves or Europeans, no? Para mas malaking audience, because Rizal want to air this particular concern that's happening in the Philippines, considering that it's a colony of Spain. Pero syempre, the work also came with a lot of criticisms, mulang-mula kay Ferdinand Blumentritt, no, na siya din nag-influence kay Rizal. For Blumentritt, ang daming parts na hindi scholarly si Rizal. No? Nawawalan siya ng objectivity. Parang attach siya masyado, no, dun sa isang bagay. So, na-overshadow ng nationalistic statements niya yung pinaka-problem. Yan. Pero, yun, despite those criticisms, Rizal still managed to pull it through, and si Blumentritt ay nakikooperate by writing its prologue. There. So, our main takeaway for the first segment of this lecture, no, is that Rizal is slowly embracing the past of the Filipinos, no. So, parang nandun na siya sa phase that he is already accepting the idea na may mali sa view sa atin ng mga Kastila, and that something must be done. Okay? So, kumbaga, inaral niya muna, tinuruan niya muna yung sarili niya on how to understand the importance of knowing the past of the Filipinos to forge an identity. Then, yun, sinimulan niya by using the annotation. Now, our next discussion is about the prequel, sequel novels to each other, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. So, I'll be discussing this on our next video. Stay tuned.